Good afternoon, everyone. It's so nice to be with all of you here today. As Adam mentioned, my primary focus is on threats to US elections that come from overseas and how this foreign interference impacts our election security, our domestic media, our social media, and of course, our campaigns. We know that our foreign adversaries want us to be divided and be susceptible to inflammatory information online. They want our system to be in chaos. These attacks are happening all the time, even though we can't see many of them. So today, I will cover the types of attacks on our elections that we've seen come from other countries. I'll also discuss some ways we can spot these attacks and protect ourselves against them. And then finally, I will touch on the US government's actions to counter these threats, including in our upcoming midterm elections. The Department of Homeland Security, which we've heard a lot about today, warned about this threat in its June 7th bulletin, writing that, quote, foreign adversaries remain intent on exploiting the dynamic threat environment to sow discord, undermine US democratic institutions, and promote or inspire violence by their supporters. You can see the summary of that threat warning up here on the screen. In order to achieve these goals, hostile foreign countries have launched several types of attacks on our democracy. Cliff Newman discussed many of these earlier. Let's go over them in some more detail now. So first, we've seen the hacking and public release of campaign documents by a hostile foreign entity with the goal of influencing an election in favor of a preferred candidate. Again, think WikiLeaks or the Clinton campaign DNC emails, which were hacked by a Russian organization working with Moscow's intelligence service. Those hacks and the emails released, as all of us probably remember, became a key topic in the 2016 election. You can see someone in a rally holding up a homemade hashtag DNC Week sign on the screen right here. Second, we've seen public misinformation campaigns waged largely on social media designed to create division in our country. Foreign actors create fake accounts that appear to be real American voters, but they're actually trolls or bots. And then those fake accounts promote propaganda, conspiracy theories, and outright lies, which are then often shared by real people thinking that they're true. This is where hostile foreign governments try to rile up Americans against one another, play us off of each other, and make us distrust our own elections outcomes by promoting false conspiracy theories. Up here on this slide is an example of that kind of attack. @10GOP is a Twitter account claiming to represent Tennessee Republicans. But it turns out that this account was not affiliated with the state party or with any Tennessee Republicans at all. @10GOP was actually a Kremlin-linked bot, and the entity ended up as part of a federal grand jury indictment for essentially waging information warfare to help a preferred candidate. The account did this by posting inflammatory and inaccurate information and conspiracy theories, all the while pretending to be an American political organization. We've also seen the scanning and probing of voter registration rolls and other voter data by Russia. There's no public evidence that this data was ever altered, but it's definitely an area that folks are keeping a close eye on. There's also, of course, the ever-present threat of ransomware attacks. You heard Cliff talk about this earlier. These are attacks by criminal groups tied to hostile foreign governments. In general, foreign ransomware attacks have been on the rise. We've all seen the press reporting about them. There's no reason to think that elections infrastructure or political entities or those third-party vendors that many of us use for election-related work, those also won't be targets too. Finally, we've seen foreign intelligence services around the world working to penetrate political campaigns and organizations across our country to gather information about candidates, even low-profile candidates, that they can then use against American politicians who become our country's leaders. US security officials are worried about what foreign governments might do around the upcoming midterm elections. And here's one example of a threat that security officials are worried about today. Russian hackers could breach a local county voter registration system. But here's the plot twist. They actually want to get detected. They want to get caught. They would then post information that they've hacked, take responsibility rather than blaming third-party vendors or hackers like they did in 2016. And then other Russian-backed forces would amplify the problems on Facebook and Twitter with the goal of churning up angry reactions and playing into this distrust that has been sown with the American public about the integrity and security of our elections to really fan the flames of that fire. Russia is not the only country undertaking this kind of activity, but they're definitely the most prolific and the most aggressive that we've seen. Other countries such as Iran and China and others are active in this space as well. For all of these reasons, elections infrastructure has been designated as critical by the US government, which allows DHS to provide prioritized cybersecurity services to state and local officials, elections officials, which jurisdictions should definitely take advantage of. Each player in the elections business on this slide represents a potential vulnerability to one of those types of attacks that I outlined above. So what can we do? Well, first we have to use good operational security. We heard this earlier from Cliff Newman, have multiple layers of security and not just one single point of failure. Second, we have to train ourselves, our campaigns, our political parties, and elections officials how to detect foreign-based disinformation, including how to spot bots by doing things like looking for hyperactivity, more than 50 to 60 tweets a day, or unlikely popularity for a very recently started account. So here's an example on the slide of this kind of bot. In August 2017, an account called @KirstenKellogg posted a tweet attacking US media outlet ProPublica, the left-leaning media outlet. This account had very low activity, only 76 followers, and was not following any accounts on its own. But its post was retweeted and liked over 23,000 times. So chances are that's not real, and it's likely coming from overseas somewhere. These are the kinds of things to look for, and crucially, as Sarah just underscored for us, to avoid sharing. Tech companies also have more to do to combat the proliferation of disinformation, much of which is coming from overseas. Social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter have civic responsibilities as they grapple with the disinformation that flourishes on their platforms. There are many ways these companies can track where online information comes from, including this infamous anecdote from 2016 about Facebook ads dealing with our election that were paid for in Russian rubles. The ads on this slide were indeed two of those that were paid for in rubles, calling themselves being patriotic with American flags, but paid for in Russian currency. A few weeks ago, Twitter announced its policy for the 2022 midterms, which is designed to combat misleading claims and false information about voting access and elections results. It's calling it its civics integrity policy. And again, much of this false information comes from overseas. Twitter is bringing back what it calls, quote, pre-bunks, which it first launched in the 2020 election to help preemptively debunk misinformation. Twitter also outlined a process for dealing with tweets that include false claims about how to vote, or misleading content intending to intimidate or dissuade people from participating in the election, or misleading claims intended to undermine public confidence in the election, including false information about the results of these elections. Tweets that fall into these categories may be flagged with tabs. They may not be able to be shared or liked on the platform. But as we all know, the challenge is so great that inevitably they won't be able to catch everything. It's a very tough challenge that they are up against. Finally, I would say, because of the seriousness of the threat, one of the most important tools is actually tools that our government has, that we and our allies use together to pressure countries like Russia and to punish them if they continue to meddle in foreign political systems, including our own. Recently, the director of the NSA, who's also the head of US Cyber Command, General Paul Nakasone, you can see him there on the screen, said that in an interview that we are going to be full bore against foreign interference and influence in our election. He said he's very focused on whether ransomware would disrupt the midterm elections and that the US is conducting a series of operations right now to prevent that from happening. After the foreign interference in the 2016 election, Cyber Command was given more authority to conduct offensive operations overseas, to take the fight to the people attacking our elections. And he said that his team conducted more than 24 operations to get ahead of foreign threats before they interfered with the 2020 election. So many parts of the federal government are involved in this fight. The Justice Department recently unsealed an indictment against a Russian citizen who was working on behalf of the Russian government. who allegedly orchestrated a years-long foreign influence campaign that used various US political groups to sow discord, spread pro-Russian propaganda, and interfere in elections within the United States. From at least 2014 until 2022, this Russian citizen recruited political groups within the United States, one in Florida, one in Georgia, and one in California, and exercised direction over them on behalf of Russian intelligence. He provided financial support to these groups, directed them to publish pro-Russian propaganda, coordinated and funded direct action by these groups within the United States, again, out in the states, in these 3 states, and coordinated coverage of this activity in Russian media outlets. The US State Department has also gotten in the game here. They're offering up to $10 million to anyone who provides information on foreign interference in US elections as part of its Rewards for Justice program. This program is really interesting. It's been used a lot to go after terrorist organizations, criminal leaders, drug traffickers, and now we're using it to go after people interfering in our elections. The program aims to gather information that leads to the identification or location of any foreign person or entity who is engaging in foreign election interference. These are exactly the kinds of tools the US and our partners are going to have to deploy to counter this threat. The US government has immense technical tools at its disposal, but I really want to leave you with this today. I can't stress this enough. A lot of the most important work happens at the state and local level with all of you. We need to keep working to secure our elections and, crucially, not to sow doubts about the legitimacy of those elections. We cannot give these hostile foreign actors an opening to exploit, which they've done, and we know they will continue to do it if given the chance. So that responsibility falls on all of us.